with Kevin.
My motion will support literature. Drew Banger. All right, we apologize for some of the technical difficulties. We are in a new house and nothing works.
Yeah.
But we are hoping one day things will work. And until then, things will just be a little bit hairy, but that's okay. So this is WIOA Title I Case Management Training, specifically designed for those providing services to youth. We've got a lot going on today, and we got to get out of here by 3 o'clock because we have another meeting in this room. So if you have any questions, go ahead and write those down, post them in the chat. And if we have time at the end of the presentations, we'll take questions. If not, we'll just send a response to everybody through an email that just answers all of the questions. So just kind of write them down or put them in the chat, however you want to do it, and we will get started. So quick disclaimer, this material only applies to WIOA Title I programs, not any other grants that we may have. So strategies, the first element of case management, it has 3 components. There's intake and suitability. Intake is an excellent method of observing client behavior, skills, and their dedication to career. And then suitability is the only time that a case manager can lawfully refuse services to an eligible client. That makes it the most important step in all of case management. If you're going to enroll somebody in your program, they have to get a job or they have to go on to post-secondary education after they exit. If they don't, your performance will fail. So it doesn't make a lot of sense if you have a youth in your office who says, well, I never want to work. I'm just here because I have to be here. My parents are making me be here. The court's making me be here, whatever. That would be a good student to provide other services to that your office and your organization has. But that's not a suitable client for WIOA, because everyone that you enroll in WIOA, the system is going to expect them to get a job 6 months after they exit the program or go into post-secondary education of some sort 6 months after they exit the program. So that's the first step. If you're talking about using ITAs or on-the-job training or any other type of worksite training or referring them to post-secondary education while they're in the program, that is also performance, which we'll discuss at the end of this presentation. So if it's a student who is not academically where they need to be to succeed in some type of education program or training program, if they have some issues in their personal life that they need to have resolved before they complete such a program, you need to consider that. That's an element of suitability. So remember, once you enroll them in this program, once you enroll them in a training or enroll them in WIOA, you're on for the entire ride, right? All the way to whether they pass or fail performance. So like I said, fully assess their skill sets, behaviors, and the requirements on the sustainable career plan that you develop in the next step before you decide to put somebody in one of these programs. The second element of strategy is sustainable career planning. This is what we do. This is what we are all here to do. We are here to assist these youth in developing a plan to achieve a successful career that allows them to take care of their families, take care of their loved ones, aging parents, whatever, save some money, buy a house, all that good stuff. That's your job, right? That's why we're here. So sustainable career planning involves empowering individuals to pursue paths that align with their interests and skills, but are also elements in a high demand or high wage, high demand occupation. Something where they can get a job and make decent money and ultimately, like I said, achieve those dreams. That's what we're here for. So sustainable career planning itself encompasses access to comprehensive career exploration. They need to know what they're good at, what their competencies might lead them to in a successful pathway. They need career guidance. These are children. They need mentorship. These are children, right? That should be a given. That should be something that your offices are capable of doing. They may need educational resources, right? Some students may not be reading or performing math at a level that's sustainable for the type of career path they want. Some students may need assistance with English as a second language, stuff like that. And then finally, fostering resilience and adaptability will equip the students with the tools to navigate the obstacles, right? So there's a long-term reason why we're doing this. We're trying to Get the students to come to like weekly workshops. Get the students to come to the mentorship sessions. Try to instill within them a work ethic, in other words, so that they can thrive in the job market. The final element of strategy is exit strategy. This is a very important element that is often overlooked. The majority of cases that fail performance do so because the case managers exit the client too early. WIOA does not require an exit timeline. You are both allowed and encouraged to wait until you have found employment or post-secondary training placement before you exit your client. There's no reason to exit a client if they're still like interacting with you, if they're still invested in the process, unless you've got them lined up with a job or some type of further training. You don't just want to send them home and hope that they get their act together in 6 months. It's your job to help them get their act together in 6 months. These are children. I'm going to say that a lot. We got to kind of keep our eye on the prize with what we're doing because this is a youth training. All right, case notes. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on case notes or documents. Most of you have heard this stuff before. And like I said, we're a bit pressed today. But the number one thing to take away is do more with less. Case notes in the 90s and 80s were these long essays, beautiful prose pieces, hundreds of pages, all that stuff. The world has changed, right? We all know about AI. We know about systems processing, all of that stuff. There's no reason to create a full essay for every single case note. So we're going to give some tips about how to do that. All we need to do is capture the important information. That's what a case note should do. So here are the elements in the system that require a case note. Most of these are like eligibility. If you're dealing with a foster care child or a child that's dealing with homelessness or is a runaway, a child that might be an ex-offender, right, or an English language learner, like this is all eligibility stuff. You need to describe the eligibility process in a case note. We'll go over that. This also includes training dates, the type of training, the date that the student was enrolled in the training, the date that the training closes, right? And just like, so it's kind of like services, in other words. So this is a good desk reference. This entire PowerPoint is in our system under Staff Online Resources. There are a few slides that I think I like to always call good desk references. If you're like, do I need to have a case note for this? Check this slide. It'll let you know if you do or don't. Characteristics of a case notes. Case notes should be clear. They should be concise. Like I said, as brief as possible while covering the required information. They should be factual, right? We don't need opinions in a case note. It should all be very factually oriented. They need to be relevant. They need to discuss WIOA. They need to discuss a service that you're providing. They need to discuss the WIOA process. We don't need to know about these kids' families. We don't need to know about, anything outside of what's relevant for their career pathway, right? That's what we're here for, and we don't want all that personal information in the system. Timely. Case notes should be written shortly after the event they describe. Don't take forever to write your case notes. You're going to lose some context and forget a few things that might have been important. Try to get them in as soon as possible. Identifiable. List the full names for non-participant individuals. If you're discussing the child's employer or a case manager or some type of training provider, we need to know who that is at least one time in the case note. In case we have to do any auditing or anything like that, or if something happens, we need to know who Susie is, what's Susie's last name, that type of thing. Some rules for writing case notes. Do not use a case note to vent or complain. This is a major red flag. It'll always lead the auditor to more thoroughly review your case notes because they're going to be like, how many other bombs are existing in this caseload? What is this person's problem? Why are they using this official public government system to vent or complain about the case? There's a better outlet for that. Don't do it in a case note. We prefer bullet points. I'm not telling you you must absolutely always use bullet points, but I've advised you that we're trying to be concise. We're trying to be like thorough, but clear. So there's really no reason to write in paragraph form. We're kind of trying to shift away from that and move into the bullet point form. It's easier for the auditors to read bullet points, find the information they're looking for, and get out of your case so they don't find anything else, right? So like I said, it's not a hard requirement, but bullet points are preferred over paragraphs. Do not use shorthand, non-WIOA abbreviations, or anything like that without citations. And as always, don't use slang, cliches, or jargon. Participant status and follow-up contact case notes should be entered quarterly. right? So once a quarter, there should be a case note discussing the status of the participant, or if they're in follow-up, like, are they working? Have they been put into post-secondary training, all that stuff. But we try to get those in quarterly. If you are trying to do something more often than quarterly because of your organization's practices, we ask that you use a contact log, telephone log, or some other system if it's for non-WIOA communications, right? Please don't clutter our system with kind of irrelevant or something that's very specific to your organization but doesn't have anything to do with WIOA, because like we're trying to, again, make sure the case itself reads as concisely as possible so auditors can come in, find the information, and get out, right? WIOA communication events should be entered as they occur, as long as they describe an update or significant information. I'll say it again. WIOA events should be entered as they occur, as long as they describe or update significant information, right? Keep writing your case notes. I'm not telling you not to write case notes. I'm telling you case notes need to be relevant. Do not comment on irrelevant details, right? Our systems are audited more frequently, so it's not a good idea to spam our system with a bunch of personal information about the student. Like that's not a sound practice, right? That could be a violation of like privacy and confidentiality and HIPAA and FERPA and all this other stuff, right? We don't want all the IRPAs to come after us. So just like I said, focus on being relevant to WIOA when you're within our system. A few more rules. List the date. This is a small problem, but it happens frequently enough to be a big issue. Do not write a case notes today, for example, that says last Thursday. That case note might be reviewed 2 years from now, right? And then last Thursday is not going to help us. We need to know the date. If an event happens on the day that you write the case note, you can say today or on this date, but otherwise use a standard date format. The subject must describe the contents of the case note. Do not ever create a case note titled case note. Do not create a subject titled subject. It needs to describe what is within it. Again, you want to create a clear path for auditors to find the information they're looking for and get out of your caseload. You don't want those people perusing every single case note you have because all of them are titled case note. They're going to do that, but they're going to do it malignantly and find as many findings as they can. You want them to get in and get out. Sidebar, I'm also the manager of the auditing section. So the auditor, the head auditor, is telling you this. Don't get yourself in trouble. Let us know what you're talking about in the subject line so we get in your system and get out of your system. Case notes must document a significant step in the case management process. So what I'm saying is do not create an all is well or a training continues case note. If the system has a service open, the assumption is training is continuing and all is well. What we need to know is if training is not going to continue, if the student is no longer participating in the training, if they've dropped out, whatever, or if things are not well, if there's something wrong with the case or with the student that's impeding their training process. Partner, organization, and other agency interactions follow the same rules. Include dates, include the full name, all that good stuff. And because some case management theory might be helpful, these days case notes are used alongside documents. So when we are auditing your cases, we have your case notes on one screen and we have your documents on another screen. So as a rule, if information exists in a document that's uploaded into the system, it should not be described in detail on a case note, right? That doesn't make any sense. We don't need to know what the handicap is. There's supposed to be a document in the system discussing the handicap. We don't need to know, what the, trying to think of other examples. Like, we don't need to know what the disabilities, or not disability, but the disadvantage status of the participant is in detail. You can just say that they're disadvantaged, and then it should be in a document. That's just kind of like a rule of thumb. And that is because of privacy and confidentiality. This is the screen. I'm not going to read it all, but this is essentially the list of highly sensitive information as codified by the federal government. So anything on this list could be considered a violation of the participant's rights if you disclose it without reason, right? And like I said, you all seen similar slides to this before. I'm not going to go into agonizing detail. But there are some things that do trip people up. The first two trip people up a lot. living arrangements, and relationship status. None of our participants have boyfriends and girlfriends. If they do, we don't need that in a case note. If it's imperative that you have that person's name in the system, just put their name. We don't need to know the status of their relationship, right? We don't need to know that they're living together. All of that stuff is considered highly sensitive. So just be very aware of the items on this list, right? Because they'll get you in trouble. All right. So this is another good slide as a desk reference. This gives you a list of mandatory case notes for every single case. So every single case in the system should have an intake and eligibility case note. You're just describing the intake process, the eligibility process, some of the barriers and all that good stuff that the participant has and why you enrolled them into WIOA. Then you're going to possibly have a determination of training need and a suitability case note. If you determine suitability on the same day that you do eligibility, that's pretty common. That's fine. Those could be one big case note. Just title it eligibility and suitability. And then the suitability section, use brief factual statements to talk about if you're going to enroll them in training, why you believe they're suitable for that training, why that training is beneficial for the client, does it link to employment opportunities in your area, is that all that good stuff should be in a case note as well. If you do enroll them in training of any sort, whether it's financial literacy training, work-based learning, anything like that, you need a training begin date and you need a training end date. That should be described in a case note. Let us know what the training is, and then in the end date, go ahead and let us know why it's closing, was it successful, all that good stuff. And then finally, the service closure and exit. Whenever you close a service, we need a case note describing the closure of the service. When you exit the case, that is to close the last service, as we'll describe this afternoon. We need a case note to talk about the case being exited. And finally, follow-up. Every quarter you're required to do follow-up. That's how you get your performance information. So you need to also create a case note each quarter to describe the follow-up, how you got a hold of the student, is the student working, have they enrolled in some type of education, all that good stuff. Did they finally get their CDL or whatever? Okay, the initial case note is critical, so I'm going to go into it in a little more detail here. The initial case note should give a description of why you're enrolling the student in Title I services, and maybe a list of the future services or activities that you believe would benefit the student. For youth participants, you can ignore the first part here, but for youth participants, you should also describe the objective assessment and the individual service strategy and that whole interview process. What are the students' strengths? What are their weaknesses? What types of services are going to benefit the student? All that stuff that you put in the objective assessment and the individual service strategy, the ISS, should be briefly described in the initial case note. You should also describe any assessments. So if you're doing TABE testing, for example, or also if there's some type of higher suitability requirement, like if you're trying to get somebody in manufacturing and there might be some physical demands and all that stuff, or you're trying to get them in computer science, their technical skills needed, all that stuff, right? Don't make the participant's personal history part of the public record, but do include anything that relates to the suitability for the career path that y'all have decided on together. For barriers, we prefer that you list the status as, for example, disabled. The student is disabled. There should be paperwork that you upload that describes the disability, so we don't need that to be described in detail in the case note. You could say that they're disadvantaged. You don't have to say they're poor or something like that. Just say they're disadvantaged, or they are skills deficient. Don't say they're dumb as rocks. Say they're skills deficient. It sounds more professional, right? Just upload the required documentation. That's what we'll use if we need context for what's wrong with the student's situation. We'll use the documentation. This is a sample case note. We're a little pressed for time, and you guys can read, so I'm not going to read through it. But in essence, this is a good example of a intake eligibility case note, that initial case note. It talks about some of the strengths of the student. It talks about why we're enrolling the student in this LPN training. And then it gives some particulars on that training so that we have some reference for when it's going to start, when it's supposed to end, and how much it will cost. All right, there are templates within the system. We can assist your organization with creating those. You can create them yourself. They're not difficult, but it might be easier, for at least for the first time, if you want some guidance with that. We can definitely help you with that. These are useful when your organization is fine. If you're finding yourself writing the exact same case note multiple times for like every single participant, like every participant goes through financial literacy. I'm tired of writing a case note every time someone does, that type of thing. We can just create a template where you can press 3 buttons and the system will just write the entire case note. All you have to do is put a date on it. So that could be very helpful. Like I said, if you have a very repetitive case note, something that you're a service you provide every student, something something like that, just let us know and we can work with you to create those templates. Really can speed up your day. Okay, documents. The number one rule of documents is if it's not uploaded into the system, then it does not exist. You can't say, oh, sorry, Kevin, like I know your auditor said we didn't have this. We found it in our files here. We're just going to upload it to the system. That's great. We're going to ask you to do that, but it will still be a finding. It has to be within the computer system. We are a paperless agency by state law. So we're not allowed to look at paper documentation. It has to be in the electronic system. Otherwise, it does not exist. So whenever you're going through the system, you will often come across this verify section. It'll have a verify with the red asterisk. It'll give you a few hyperlinks, verify, scan, and upload. And then once you click one of those, it'll give you a list of documents that the system is asking for. So the way to read this is, for example, if you have a veteran and you're like, you put in the system that this student is a veteran, right? You have to verify that. That's what this is letting you know. That means there has to be a document uploaded into the system that verifies their veteran status. So for example, the DD-214. You would upload the student's DD-214 into the system, you hit the verify hyperlink, and then you would click the DD-214 button. It's as simple as that. If you see this screen, it's the system letting you know if you don't put the document in the system, it's going to be a finding. The auditors are going to come get you, and those are really mean folks, so you don't want them on your tail. So there is a type of verification called self-attestation. If you've been around for a while, this has been called all kinds of things. Participant status letter, client certification, self-certification, all that stuff. The federal government was like, we're tired of all these titles. We're just going to call it self-attestation from now on. I don't really care what you call it, as long as you do it correctly. So here are the elements that can be verified with self-attestation. There's date of birth, individual with a disability, eligible veteran status, long-term unemployed entry, date of dislocation, low income status, displaced homemaker, right? However, just because you can verify these with self-attestation doesn't mean that you always should. We've been cited in the past for having too many self-attestations. So in Alabama, the rule is you make an adequate attempt to get these documents first. You absolutely have to try. You cannot just write every single veteran write a self-attestation and you're good to go. We will write you up for that. You must make an effort. The second element of that is if you are unable to get the documentation, you've tried, you've called grandma, you've called the pastor, you just can't get them to get this document, but you still think they're a good fit for WIOA, you can use the self-attestation, create a case note describing why you use the self-attestation, and then the next thing you do is you get a copy of that document for the student. If you have a disability, you'll need disability paperwork for the rest of your life. People will be questioning it forever. If you do not have a driver's license, you need a driver's license. You can't get a job without a driver's license. If you're a veteran, you need your DD-214. You'll be eligible for all kinds of veteran benefits for the rest of your life. If you don't have your DD-214, it's going to take forever for those benefits to come your way. So do a service for the student, because that's what we're here for, right? And get the document. Then upload it into the system, make sure the student has the main copy, and everybody's happy, right? That's how we help people. That's our job, right? Okay. Some elements in the system require documentation absolutely every time. You cannot use self-attestation for them under any circumstance. You must have the official document. That includes TANF and SNAP, as well as SSI and any other public assistance recipient. So we have to have the actual document from DHR, from the Social Security Administration, whatever, right? They have to have a verified document that verifies that student is receiving TANF or SNAP, or more likely is in the budget of somebody who's receiving TANF or SNAP. Basic skills deficiency, we use the TABE testing process. So if you're listing a student's basic skills deficiency, they have to have a pre-TABE in the system. Provider name, this isn't a big deal anymore because we have provider name all over the system. Technically, it requires documentation, but don't worry about that. We have contracts that allow us to get the provider name. Credentials, you have to have a copy of the credential. If they get their high school diploma, or they get their GED, or if they get their CDL, you actually have to get a copy of that diploma or certification and upload it into the system. That's the only way it's going to count for performance. Employment information. This one's kind of tricky. It's hard to get pay stubs, like all of that stuff. We have created a document called the Participant Employer Follow-Up Survey. It's on Staff Online Resources. It's a short form that either the student can fill out or their employer can fill out, and you can upload that into the system, and that counts as employment verification. That's a little bit easier than trying to get pay stubs or bank notes or, like tax documents, right? And it's also a little bit safer than those things. So do consider using that. Like I said, it's in the Staff Online Resource Center. MSG dates. So a big problem is that like report cards these days don't have dates on them. Sometimes diplomas don't have dates on them, like they'll give the month and the year. The way to get over that is if you have an MSG, like a report card or transcript or diploma or whatever, and it doesn't have the date, obtain the date. Discuss it with the school, discuss it with the parent, whatever you have to do, get what day that event happened. And then once you have that, create a case note in the system that describes the date and how you got that official date. And then simply write the date somewhere on the document and initial it. That way auditors will know, okay, that the school doesn't put dates on their report cards for some dumb reason, but the case manager went the extra mile, got the date from someone, counselor, principal, whatever, teacher, and wrote a case note, and then they signed the actual date onto it. That's perfect. We can use that. Data program entry should be on the application. The date on the application that the participant signs the application should be the date of program entry. There is no lag. You can backdate if you're in the system and you're kind of working behind. That's fine. We're all busy. You can backdate like up to a week. Go ahead and do that, right? If like 30 days have passed, I don't know why 30 days would have passed. Don't let 30 days pass. But if it has passed, contact me or Cecily, and we can get that fixed for you. But we're going to have questions. The student, once they apply, and you've determined that they're eligible, they should be starting the program almost immediately. There shouldn't be some lag. These are children who are in disadvantageous positions. They need the help, right? Okay, this slide is all wacky, so I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm just going to pull them all up. Jess has probably told you all this before. All eligibility documents can be uploaded as one big file. That makes it easier for you, makes it easier for us. So just go ahead and put all those documents together, driver's license, application, social security card, all that good stuff, all uploaded all as one big file. That just makes it easier. Other assessments should be uploaded separately, obviously, right? Do not upload blank pages. That's a common problem. It's not something you get written up for. But it's what happens often is someone will think they uploaded something, but the system only received a blank page. So check your scanner settings. Make sure you actually have the document when you scan something in. Dates are critical. Make certain that any date you enter into the system, like the entry date, matches the signed document in the system, right? They have to match. If the dates are different, that's a red flag for auditors. We're going to review that, and it could be a finding. We're going to ask, why are these dates different? They shouldn't be different, right? If you have something that discusses a service that you provided, it needs to match the service code, date, and system. All that stuff should match. So, just try to be accurate, right? That's a big thing. If I already talked about this, if a non-intake document like that report card, transcript, all that stuff, if it has a blank or incorrect date, you, like I already said, you can get that fixed, and those are the rules of how you do it. Just make sure you do a case note. Make sure you upload the correct documents to the correct person. This is an easy mistake to make, but it's not a forgivable mistake. This is absolutely a red flag. We've had youth providers lose their contracts over this because they exposed PII to a different group of people by mistake. Make sure you're uploading someone's documents to their case. Be thorough, be accurate. That's like the #1 thing for a case manager: integrity and accuracy. Make sure your documents are legible. Try not to copy, all that good stuff. That reduces the integrity, makes it hard to read. If we actually have to be able to read the documents for them to count. Please advise us if your organization has any documents they would like to upload into the system. That's fine. It's not like we are going to get upset. We don't mind if you upload documents into the system, like from your organization, but we do have to know what those documents are and approve it. We have had federal monitors come in and be like, "What is this document? You didn't give us a copy of this, and we found this in this case." If we are looking at it and we have never seen it before, and it has your organization's header at the top, we can't protect you if the federal auditor is like, "Well, this isn't a valid document." If we know and we've approved it, we can say, "Oh, we allowed them to do that. Is that not okay? That's our fault. Don't blame them." But if you just start scanning stuff willy-nilly into the system, we're going to be like, "I don't know what they're up to. I guess you'll have to write them up." So just be careful, right? Let us know. There should be a dialogue. Only upload the TABE page that has the scores. Please do not upload all like 500 or whatever pages of the TABE. We just need the score page. Don't use outdated documents. The only documents that you need are on staff online resources in Alabama Works. We'll show you that this afternoon. Don't use outdated documents. We have to update them regularly because the federal government is constantly changing its mind. Every field on every intake document must be filled out, especially the application. Do not leave blank fields. If a field absolutely doesn't make sense or doesn't apply to the participant, write NA. It should not just be blank. I don't think this feature is in Alabama Works anymore. I think I got so angry about it that I just removed the coding for it entirely. But if you see the link feature, don't hit it. It does not work. Just use the verify button and you will be good to go. I said notes and documents questions, but let's just wait till the end. Like I said, type your questions into the chat. And once my presentation is over, I think we should have some time because I'm kind of blazing through it. We'll answer the questions then. So just type them into the chat for now. Performance, everyone's favorite subject. There are 4 primary performance measurements: employment, credentials, measurable skills gains, and retention. I'm going to go into each of those in agonizing detail in a minute. We have secondary performance. So those are performance measurements like participants served, training being related to employment, and youth placement and education. These are also very important. They're not the same level of importance as those primary measurements, but we still look at them, especially for youth contracts. You guys are most likely contracted with your local area to serve a certain number of participants each year. So those are essentially primary performance measurements, like make sure you serve the amount that you contracted out to serve. And then there's median earnings. You will see this on performance reports. It's something that is discussed, but we don't measure median earnings at the local area level or at like the office level. We only look at that at the state level because there's not a lot y'all can do to impact how much businesses pay people. I'm not saying it's not important. Think of it more like it's important that you find a good job for your students. Right? These kids have already had a rough shake in life. Like they need all the advantages they can get. They need to be making good income, like I said, so they can raise their families, take care of their families, all that good stuff. Like there's always a reason for what we're doing. And you guys like literally help children who've had a hard time. So that's so important that you put them in career paths that are sustainable and that they'll get a decent wage out of so they can have, successful careers. Okay. Performance starts and ends with a document called the Pearl. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this. Think of it as a gigantic spreadsheet that essentially sends every piece of data in the system to the federal government. For every participant in the system that you put in the system, there are 509 different columns of data. So it's 2025. Don't think you can get away with putting something or not putting something into the system. It's going to report to the federal government, and they have AI and machine learning and all that stuff. They're going to notice the discrepancies. We're going to be able to tell if something is just not being entered or is being entered incorrectly. So like I said, integrity and accuracy, those are the 2 best tools in a case manager's toolbox, because almost everything you're doing is being submitted to the Pearl, which is being read by both the state and the federal government. Let's get into performance itself. Employment. We measure employment with a metric called employment rate in a quarter. Any individual, like I said at the beginning, any individual that you put in the system needs to get a job. They are included in the denominator for the employment rate. So they will count against you if they just decide or never have the opportunity to find a job. That's your job. You help them get the job. We measure employment 2 times, 6 months after exit and 12 months after exit. So 2 quarters and 4 quarters out. The type of employment does not matter. Like I said, You need to do the best by your students. They've had a rough shake in life. Try to get them the best job possible or put them in training so that they can eventually get a decent job and get on a good career path. But for this metric, the type of employment does not matter. As long as they're making a wage, it will count as a success. The system calculates this metric using follow-up information that you guys enter into the system. Cecily will show you where to enter that information this afternoon. We do have wage matching from a few databases, but I'm going to be the first one to tell you that's not always accurate. It's not always up to date. It is not like a substitute for doing your follow-up. You want to do your follow-up, or else your program is most likely going to fail its performance. The data matching is just not, I don't know what the word is. It's just not salient enough to get that done every single time. It helps, but it doesn't do the job for you. Oh, I have a whole point on that. There it is. So it's in blue and white right in front of me. Okay, measurable skills gains. This is a little bit more complicated. So measurable skills gains only, the full term is measurable skills gain towards employment or a credential. So only individuals who are put into like OJT apprenticeship or like an ITA require a measurable skills gain. So it's not like employment where every single student is supposed to get one. It's only individuals who are put in a certain type of training. And I have a slide coming up that'll show you the list of training and other types of students that require measurable skills gains in a second. For example, all in-school youth require a measurable skills gain. They're in high school. The measurable skills gains will be their report cards. So if you try to enroll an in-school youth, just be aware that student's going to have a measurable skills gain and a credential because they're in school. So they're a little harder to serve than the out-of-school youth are. Also, if they're co-enrolled in one of these 3 youth programs, Adult Ed, Youth Build, or Job Corps, if that's even still a thing, it will require an MSG. There are times when a student may require multiple MSGs. It's very complicated. It's like time math, which is the worst kind of math. So I just always advise to record every MSG the student gets. Every semester, they should have a report card. They should have a transcript, right? You should be doing your post-TAID testing, right? Just record every single one. That way you won't get pegged on a certain year because of this weird multiple MSG requirement. There are 5 types of MSGs. Educational functioning level gains, we measure that with the TABE. Secondary school diploma alongside employment or further training, that counts as an MSG. So if they graduate high school or they get their GED and then they find a job, or they go on to like CDL or like manufacturing training or nursing or something like that, then the secondary school diploma can count as an MSG. Secondary, post-secondary transcript, these are the report cards, like I was talking about, get their report cards, get their transcripts if they're in like associate school or community college or something like that. Training milestones are for on-the-job training and apprenticeship. So if we don't do a lot of these with youth, but if you do have a youth that's in an apprenticeship program or an on-the-job training program, they will need training milestones, which you can enter 51 once they completed 51% of their contracted hours, and you can enter a second one when they've completed the program entirely. So if that's a little confusing, like I said, we don't have a lot of these. You can contact us for a little extra clarification. But essentially, when they reach the halfway point, that's the first milestone. And then when they complete the training, that's the second milestone. And again, just for on-the-job training and apprenticeships. The last type is the skills progression. So this one's a little more common. These are like the examinations that you have to take for a certain occupation. So it could be like the CDL exam. It could be like LPN program. It could be the ACE program, which is something we have in the state. There are lots of examples of it, so I can't give you an exhaustive list. But essentially, if they're in like an ITA and they have to take this like one test to short-term training, and there's this one big test they have to take, that would be the MSG, the skills progression. Okay, this is another good desk reference. These are the services and the descriptions of the students you may have in your caseload that will definitely require an MSG. Like I said, all in-school youth, any youth that's co-enrolled in one of these other 3 programs, and then the other category is all youth participants that have one of these services, right? So if you enroll them in 406 or 414 or 428, they're going to have an MSG. So that's very helpful to go ahead and have this like on your desk and be like, well, I'm entering a 428. Do they need an MSG? Oh crap, they do need an MSG. Well, let me make sure I'm paying attention to that type of thing. Credentials. Credentials, any individual that's receiving a specific type of training, a credentialing training program, requires a credential. I have a similar slide that gives the same kind of formatted list of who actually needs a credential, so don't worry about that too much. Just as a note, on-the-job training and work-based learning does not require or report credentials, so you don't have to worry about that for them. Those students only need an MSG. There are 4 requirements for something to count as a credential. So if you are working with a partner, or somehow you have this credential in mind for one of your students and you're wondering if we'll cover the cost for it, be mindful of these 4 core requirements. It has to have at least 40 hours of instruction. That's a low bar. Most of them have like 200 or more hours of instruction. It has to have competitive costs. It should have its own course of study. And then the most important requirement is that it fulfills the requirements for entry for requirements for an entry or better full-time position with multiple companies across an industry. That's what a credential is, right? So just like a note, like I said, if you're like, I want to work with this program for our student, but I don't know if it's a WIOA credential, just contact me or Cecily, and we can get you an answer to that. Because there's a ton of credentials out there, so it's hard to give just like a set of rules, but this is the best attempt we've been able to make on it. Okay, so here's the next really good desk reference for who requires a credential. So if they're in high school, if they're in a GED attainment program, right? If they're already in post-secondary school or something like that, all of those students will require a credential, right? So in-school youth always require a credential. Otherwise, for out-of-school youth, if you have enrolled them in one of these 7 training services, they will require a credential, like adult ed, occupational skills training, tutoring, anything like that. Okay, let's start with secondary performance. Participants served, y'all know what that is. It's the number of students that you serve. Like I said, you're contracted to serve a certain amount. We highly encourage you to meet or exceed that benchmark so that you can continue to be funded year after year. Training related. So this is only for training services. If someone goes through an ITA or goes through an on-the-job training program with you, we do track to see if the job that they get when they exit is related to that. So if someone passes their CDL exam through your organization, then then they need to be working as a truck driver, for example. If someone passes like their LPN, they need to be working in the healthcare field, that type of thing. That's what it's tracking. And then retention. I'm not a big fan of this, especially for youth, but essentially the federal government thinks it's a good idea to look to see if students are working at the same actual employer in the second quarter as they are in the fourth quarter. I don't want you to worry about this. This is the least important performance measurement. Help the student get the best job, and if a better job comes along, encourage them to get the better job and just create a case note saying the student has left this employer and is now working at this employer because they pay more, or they have daycare, or they have remote jobs, like whatever. Just describe in a case note why the participant left, and then encourage your students to do what's best for them in their lives. Finally, youth placement education. So this is just to let you guys know, for youth, it is as valuable as far as performance goes for the student to be working as it is for them to be enrolled in training. So if your student is not working 2 quarters after exit, but the system finds that they've been enrolled in secondary or post-secondary or some other type of occupational skills training, the system's going to count it as a success, right? So it's not that we're not creating a work mill here. The students can either be working or they can be placed in another training opportunity so they can get a better job down the road. That's something unique for youth. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just wanted you guys to have a glimpse of how weird performance math is. If you're a newer program, this might be more relevant, but in essence, like you can take a look here. This is how I do performance reporting for like July 1st of a given year. So like last July, when I did the performance report, when I was looking at MSGs and participants served, I'm looking at the last 12 months of data. That makes sense, right? It stops making as much sense when you look at the other performance measurements. They're staggered, right? So when we're looking at employment, we're already looking a year in the past, right? We don't look at the last 12 months of data. We look at a year behind that. It gets even wackier when you're looking at credential attainment or fourth quarter employment, because at that point we're 18 months in the past. There are very good statistical reasons for all this. I'm not going to bore you guys with it, but just like I said, if you're a new program, we're not going to have employment and credential information right off the bat. It's going to take some time for that information to percolate through the system and be reportable. So just bear with us. We will let you know and we'll update you on your performance as it becomes available. All right. Let's see. Can we check and see if they've typed? I think we've had a few questions. Okay, so let's see. If a participant is door dashing, can that be considered legit entered employment? Yes, it can. Since they're considered gig contract workers, are they considered self-employed or DoorDash employee? They are considered a DoorDash employee. DoorDash provides W-2s just like every other employer. Good question, though. Yes, that is considered legitimate employment. No, that's all these AI things. Oh my God. Okay, what if they complete their diploma within a month? How would the courses they finish need to be recorded as MSGs? So I'm assuming the question is like, what if you enroll them on like, let's say December 1st, but they've completed their diploma by, I guess, January 1st. I guess that's the question. There's a couple ways that you can get the MSG from that. Remember that diplomas themselves can count as MSGs if the participant is found 6 months down the road to be working or to be in post-secondary training. So, obviously that's not a very common issue, but it does happen. So if somebody is already at the cusp of finishing high school, for example, or getting their GED, go ahead and record that as the MSG. That is one of the options. And then encourage them to get a job or to go into post-secondary education or training, and then that'll count as their MSG. So in essence, the diploma can count as both an MSG and a credential as long as the student eventually goes to work or is put in further education. So is there blank screens or lost audio? Okay. Okay, I hope that got fixed. We're recording this, so if there's a bit that got missed, you can watch it again. Is there a database or system where youth providers can access real-time wage data on participants? There is not. We don't even have access to real-time wage data on participants. So yeah, I know that would obviously help. It would help us too. I see Cecily nodding her head. It would very much help her, but unfortunately there is not. There have been attempts at such a thing for the last 10 years, but well, maybe I don't know who all's in the audience. Let's just say there have been attempts and they have failed. So it's something the state is still working on, but I wouldn't hold your breath. Just go and advise the student that they do have to do follow-up, that they will have to fill out a survey when they find a job, and do the best that you can, because it's not a great system, but it's all we have. The courses they completed or grade reports are not counted as MSGs. Courses they completed or grade reports. I'm assuming this is an attack onto the previous question. MSGs don't look, they can't look beyond the start date of the training. So if you enrolled the student on December 1st, you can't enter an MSG for November, right? It has to be on or after that first date of enrollment. The system just simply does not look past that. So it's not that they don't count as MSGs. If the student was like staying in school another semester, they'd count as MSGs. It's just that there's not enough time to capture them. So you have to use an alternative capture point, which would just be the diploma itself. So yeah, it's a little hard to answer. I'm not sure if I am answering that fully, but we can't look at historical information, but there are some paths around that. That also shouldn't be a super common, situation, right? Like unless you're enrolling a lot of people in April, for example, but then you would just need to encourage them to get employed after they exit. Which again, that is the job, right? That's why we're here. We're trying to help these students succeed, not just get through high school, but to get a job or go into some type of occupational skills training. All right, any other questions? Man, I killed it today. That is 1 hour. All right.
All right, we're gonna take a short, like 10-minute break, and then we will start back up. So we'll see you all in just a minute, to 10 minutes, I guess. So what time is it? 10:02. So let's say at 10:10, we'll be right back.